Scholars from across the world gathered on the grounds of Murangsa Temple in Pololo Valley, Oahu, to imagine a global, non-killing society. University of Hawaii political scientist Dr. Glenn D. Paige, author of A Global Non-Killing Political Science, gathered guests from over 40 countries for consultation of this great idea.
We used to invite two of our guests, observers, who have been here all week from Pennsylvania, Reverend Jim Amstutz and Lorraine Amstutz. They are Mennonites, members of the traditional American peace churches. And that's Jim and Lorraine to lead us in the invocation of the global non-killing spirit, which we began this forum, which continues throughout the day and throughout this forum all over. Jim, Lorraine, please.
Glenn, thank you. It's been an honor and privilege to be here to witness this historic event. Roy and Margaret Eby are also here as observers and helped to fund this event. They are members of our congregation back in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My wife Lorraine works for Mennonite Central Committee, a worldwide relief service and peace-building organization serving 50 countries with 1,000 workers around the world in the historic Peace Church tradition. She specializes in restorative justice and peace building, especially victim offender reconciliation and restorative discipline for schools. A year ago, just a few minutes drive from our congregation, the world witnessed the tragedy of the Nickel Mines Amish shooting, where a lone gunman entered an Amish one-room school and killed 5 girls. The Amish, who share the Anabaptist peace tradition with Mennonites, showed the world the embodiment of the non-killing spirit. To the shock of the world, they extended forgiveness to the shooter, who had also taken his own life, to the shooter's family. And when millions of dollars poured in from around the world to assist the Amish victims, the Amish insisted that part of the money go to the shooter and his family to help with burial, to help the children return to school, to help the widow rebuild her life. That grace, that non-killing spirit emerged out of their culture and their long historic Peace Church tradition. It is possible, by the witness of these Amish brothers and sisters, to live a non-killing lifestyle in the midst of unspeakable harm and violence.
I want to invite us now into a moment of silence as we listen to God's Spirit of love and reconciliation.
Beautiful contribution.
I remember by reading Gandhi, close to the end of World War II, he said, war itself, the sin against God and human. So anybody who participated in the World War II, they are war criminals, including President Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. I remember on the first day is buried MacGregor mentioned that the virus is a preventable disease. I think all of us in this forum seems to be a medical doctor who wants to cure out or prevent the virus in the world. Or we can work together to liberate the people from the being more criminal. Thank you very much.
Our session today are about leaders, practical leaders who risk their lives, build, really contribute. These are activists. What lessons can we learn from them? I've been Professor J. MacGregor Burns has prepared a paper called Transforming Leadership. He's 90 years old. He lives in Williamstown, Massachusetts. Professor Burns has been a very strong supporter from the very beginning of the writing and publication of non-killing global political science. He's one of our strongest supporters in the United States. The past president of the American Political Science Association, the famous political biographer of George Washington, Franklin Roosevelt, and Professor Burns chaired the Bicentennial Commission on the American Constitution. So it is a great blessing and honor that he commits his whole professional accomplishments in life to support this forum. And he was not able to be here, but I will read his work. He's very famous for a concept of transforming leadership. Transforming leadership is different from transactional leadership, which is bargaining, making deals and bargaining, and coercive leadership. He does not consider dictatorship to be leadership at all. But leadership by violence, in his thinking, is not leadership. But the bargaining type, making deals that we have, and transforming leadership are the ones he talks about. But transforming leadership is the main form. He says, I salute the eminent men and women taking part in this creative meeting. I wish that only I could attend. I look forward to reports of the discussions and hearing later reflections. Glenn has asked me to comment in advance on the role of leadership, both in thinking about titanic problems such as non-killing and others such as poverty and inequality. These days he's consumed with concern for global poverty. I should explain that I began academic life as a political scientist, but I soon branched out to studies of psychology, history, and especially philosophy. From there, I went on to do in the mid-20th century some of the early work on leadership, which I define broadly as to encapsulate studies in all the above disciplines and others. Early in my research and thinking about leadership, I began to make a distinction between transformational or transforming, which I prefer leadership, and transactional. By the latter term, transactional, I mean the kind of leadership that is exercised through bargaining, negotiating, give and take. This leadership is exercised in all societies, I believe, to different degrees and different ways, and is crucially important in settling differences, but often disintegrates with selfish and even criminal behavior. I became much more interested in transforming leadership because of its role in the great decisions that societies and nations must make, and form part of the discussions of non-killing and its highest hopes. Transforming leadership rises above transactional in order to study and promote change in nations and peoples handling the crucial issue of war and peace, social and individual justice, health, environment, and to me the most crucial problem that comes to relating all of the foregoing. Poverty in all nations, but especially in deprived or neglected areas around the world. I associate transforming leadership with leaders as different as Gandhi in India and Roosevelt in America, although your distinguished participants will know of many other examples. Transforming leaders have the capacity to rise above the day-to-day give and take and meet the broadest challenges facing society. To do this requires both vision and the capacity to change institutions, constitutions, and laws. To discuss transforming leadership, however, makes it imperative to do two things. First, to analyze perhaps the most neglected aspect of leadership, followership. How often do we read about the great leaders who succeeded or failed without any mention of the followers who supported or opposed them? Obviously, we cannot have leaders without followers, leadership without followership. Ultimately, a test of leadership, indeed, is its ability to mobilize followers and convert them into new leaders who ultimately replace the old. The second crucial aspect of transforming leadership consists of principles and ideas, the value by which it is measured. Here again, the distinction between transformational and transactional leadership is important. The latter kind of leadership, negotiators, brokers, and the like, must operate by what I call ethical standards, honesty, responsibility, reciprocity. Much of our day-to-day political and financial brokerage depends on people living up to their promises and the like. Even more important, in my view, are the values undergirding transformational leadership. Values related to freedom, equality, security, and the like. These are sometimes called Western values, but I think of them as global. Your participants would have a better knowledge of this than I. But what I do know is that there was a so-called Western Enlightenment, which was a huge and complex and often messy movement, but which fundamentally tested Western societies and governments by certain ideas. I do not need to pontificate about this. These ideas and ideals were superbly enunciated and embodied in America's greatest document, the Declaration of Independence, specifically in the resounding words, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life meaning security of persons and nations. Liberty meaning all that we associate with the broad term freedom, as in Franklin Roosevelt's for freedom. And the pursuit of happiness, a kind of vague but evocative Jeffersonian concept. But the crucial aspect of the Declaration is not these high-sounding words alone, but the fact that they represented a rational conflict over time in America, and I would add in British, continental, and other worldly societies. Over time, Americans and others have argued about security, so a person restricted or life permanent, about liberty, protection against government, or realizing broader freedom through government, as in FDR and Trudeau's Second Bill of Rights. Happiness, open to endless debate, but in my view, the greatest underpinning of happiness is social and economic equality. I hope these feeble words might make a bit of a contribution to what I expect to be creative and constructive discussion in your beautiful land. In MacGregor words, text called I thank you, your soul. So we had the perfect time for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Now we have Dennis here with us. I'd like to have him give short comment. Okay, thanks.
First of all, I'm sorry I was a little late, but can't be in two places at one time. The only thing I have to say is that reading Burns is one of the many gifts. And one page kind of pushed me to read among Burns is John Burton, and lately been sending me some inclinations about reading about poetry. So when you send me those inclinations, I tend to pick up the books to read. And I read Burns, so it's very apt for a lot of discussion there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Then hearing from Glenn and Dennis, I hope everybody will make some comments regarding the transformational leadership of power. Raise your hand. Dr. China is going to.
This is just to one word. I think one of the things important about Burns' idea is the fact that he excludes dictatorship and those who came to power and retained that power by killing as outside the realm of leadership. I think this, in effect, is a redefinition of constitute politics. Because then he said politics then becomes an interaction between leaders and followers. Then from then on, it goes on to differentiate between transactional and transformational leadership. And then on top of that, what he has done is to place emphasis on the other side of the coin of leadership, meaning us, followership. So in that sense, I think Burns contributes a great deal to non-killing by excluding the killing. Yeah? And also in the idea that Glenn has tried to make it visible for many of us, and that is the center is with us all. And therefore, it has a lot of implications in the area of nonviolent studies in general, because as we have witnessed in the past century and also the beginning of this century, what you have seen is not much of a Gandhi or Martin Luther King nor Aung San Suu Kyi. What you have seen are the facelessness of so many nonviolent actors around the world. What you have seen is the image of that lone man sitting before the tank in Beijing in 1989. What you have seen are the facelessness of this multitude of people, the followership, if you will, in the work of people like Burns, or if you will, the notion of multitude that Negri and Hart is very much interested in. So if that is the case, then we are talking about a proliferation of non-killing and non-violence in the hands of so many. And that's why the idea that non-violent society is possible becomes a reality. I think this is the importance of the Burns idea of transforming leadership and his emphasis on followership and excluding killing.
Thank you.
We might add something to the concept and call it transforming non-killing leadership, make it explicit. Because he cites those, sometimes he cites other people who had massive changes by inspiring people, many of them are violent. This is a contribution in labeling people as transforming. Yeah, the point you pointed out, wonderful.
Thank you, sir, and good morning, everybody. And what you have said about transformational and transitional leadership, it's all right, but we have to think on the basis of concrete reality, what is happening all over the world. We said that we are unfortunate to say that everywhere who are in powers, they are not following the principles or tenets of political science, the rules of law, what should be in order to be the true leaders. And I think without the virtue of goodness among the leaders and the people, we cannot attain the goal, the non-killing or non-violent world or society in this world. And we have to give importance to the reality of the fact. In our country, we the people, we see during Ashad period, the longest political history in Bangladesh. Ashad was in power, he was a military man, and he divided the nation, and he took the policy of divide and rule, and was in power for longest period in the political history of Bangladesh. But when the people, they got united and they put force over him that we don't want, then he was compelled to give up power. It depends on the people. Until and unless we, the people who are in majority in believing the concept, having a peaceful, non-killing world, we don't have the political authority. Political authority lies in the hands of the political leaders who actually don't want to share powers with the people. They actually don't want to, the reality shows that they are not working for the well-being of the people, what they say before coming into power. They are not working for the well-being of the people and well-being of the society. Instead, what they do, they want to remain in power, somehow having some supports of the people, having the supports of the elites groups of the people. They took the policy of divide and rule. But we have to, in order to attain our goal, in order to establish the non-violent and non-killing society, which is the desire of the majority of the people of the world, we have to get united. And in order to do that, we have to have a virtue of goodness that will that would help to attain our goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the kind of leadership which we are trying to change. Thank you very much. Now, I think we have to turn our mic to Koozma J. Tarasoff. He's going to talk about Tolstoy and the Doukhobors, Canada.
Aloha. In the evolution of ideas of getting rid of the institution of militarism and war, the lessons of Tolstoy and the Doukhobors merit special attention. My ancestors, the spirit wrestlers or Doukhobors, evolved centuries back, stemming from the Bulgarian Bogomils in the 1200s and the Raskol, or big split, in the Russian Orthodox Church in the mid-1600s. They disposed entirely with church trappings and argued that God exists in every person, spirit, and truth, that man is his own church, and therefore there is no need for priests. For them, the notion of the Spirit of God, Buddha, and or Christ, in each of us is practically synonymous with love, beauty, and justice. It is similar or identical to what the Society of Friends call the light within. As hardworking pioneers living in a communal setting, the Doukhobors settled in the Crimean region of southern Russia in the 1700s. 40 years later, they were exiled to the Caucasus between the Caspian and the Black Seas. Later in 1899, one-third of them, or 7,500, were exiled to Canada, where some 40,000 exist today. A similar number reside in scattered areas of Russia. The Doukhobors' two acts of defiance against militarism in 1895 have been a profound inspiration for them up to the present time. First, on Easter of that year, the young soldier Matvei Lebedov and 10 other Doukhobors threw down their guns while training in the Yelizavetpol Reserve Battalion in the Caucasus region of southern Russia, stating that war and Christianity are incompatible. The result was that the dissidents were disciplinary battalion and exile, along with 60 other Doukhobor young men in active service. Second, on midnight of June 29, 1895, 7,000 Doukhobors in 3 districts of the Caucasus set ablaze piles of their rifles, pistols, and swords in the first mass protest in history against war and militarism. The Tsar's government perceived this as treason, and its response was swift, with severe floggings, killings, and exile. This event that literally shook the world attracted the attention of Lev Nikolaevich Tolstoy, the most popular Russian writer and philosopher of the day. Doukhobors normally lived in peaceful communities. They worked hard, did not kill, and were real Christians in action. Tolstoy saw his moral ideas implanted in the life of the Doukhobors. Lesson 1, learning, inspiring, cooperating, and acting with conviction. The arms burning event was unique. Geographically isolated, it was of a scale, visual impact, and ideology that could not be ignored by the government, the church, the media, as well as the most prominent writer, Tolstoy. Lev Nikolaevich Tolstoy, his son Sergei, his friends, and the Quakers came together for this great cause of non-killing and helped the Doukhobors from becoming extinct. Tolstoy penned an appeal for help, completed his book Resurrection, and helped 7,500 Russian dissidents, the most persecuted ones, to emigrate to Western Canada in 1899. As a great Russian writer and philosopher, Leo Tolstoy was indeed a literary artist who was dedicated to nonviolence, non-killing. His many writings reflected his philosophy. Gradually, he evolved from a rich, spoiled child to a moral figure, as shown in the evolution of his literary works. At the end of 1856, Tolstoy retired from 5 years of military service and soon made a 6-month tour of Europe. While in Paris, he was so shocked by the guillotine execution of a prisoner that he later was stimulated to lobby for the end of capital punishment. His major epic work, War and Peace, showed the wider picture of war between Russia and France and the absurdity of it all. Lesson 2, exposing the truth about war and killing. Tolstoy was one of the first to seriously question the very nature of war, especially the act of killing. Writings, Prisoners of Caucasus, and in War and Peace, he looked at the psychological causes of war. Why war? What is it about? Why is it driven by some tyrannical power of the divine right of kings, the gods, or the empire? Why is it that states conscript men and resources to maintain power? In answer, Tolstoy exposed the falsehood, hypocrisy, and absurdity of war. Soldiers, he said, glory in the mystique of power to the point that they are persuaded to go against their conscience and moral upbringing of thou shalt not kill. They believe in cannon fodder because they have been hypnotized from childhood in school books, church services, sermons, peace speeches, newspapers, poems, and monuments, writes Tolstoy. Today, we can truly say that war is a blight on our civilization and the slavery of our times. It reverberates through the centuries, including the hope in recent times of the United Nations to get rid of the scourge of war. The military and the generals, together with politicians who dictate that men must kill for the state as a patriotic duty, as well as the religious leaders who support the cause, are all part of the institutions that keep the people in slavery. They perpetuate the act of state-sponsored murder and hinder the path towards a non-killing society. The way to stop the wholesale slaughter of people, wrote Tolstoy, is to refuse supporting war, as we have done with the trading of human slaves. Lesson 3, the importance of values, education, and work for the health of humanity. The search for truth and the meaning of life gave Lev Tolstoy width and breadth and depth in becoming a world literary figure as well as a moral leader. In his Socratic quest, he was not afraid to question his personal behavior and societal injustice. In Anna Karenina, he unveiled the Russian society with its aristocrats, peasants, the military, and the church. Then in his book, The Kingdom of God is Within You, he laid down his philosophical, religious principles of life. The kingdom of God which is within you can only be reached by effort, he said, through responsible action and through the search for truth. Until 1861, the majority of the Russian people was serfs and had no rights. The rich aristocracy had the power and the rights. Here, Tolstoy reassessed his past, and at his Yasne Polana home, he started to understand the injustice of life of his own peasants. He saw the beauty of the common man and was the first to liberate them. Tolstoy opened a school for peasants in his family estate before helping found 20 more schools in neighboring villages, in freedom of information, and allowed the students to study whatever they desired. As editor of an educational journal, Tolstoy wrote that upper classes had as much to learn from peasants as peasants had to learn from upper classes. The aristocrat turned teacher taught the golden rule and believed that truth alone is capable of relieving our global community from incalculable ills produced by war. Today, more than 100 schools in Russia work according to Tolstoy's ideas. These ideas offer a new content based on nonviolent communication between human beings. The students study new disciplines and read many of Tolstoy's works. No doubt the acceptance of a non-killing society is a long-term process beginning with childhood upbringing as well as family, community, political, and social supports. Children's stories of non-killing will encourage them to turn to these examples as models of behavior. Exposing children to good works and cooperative games where people work together to solve problems is a step in the right direction. Lesson number 4. Letters build networks and wisdom for cultivating world citizenship. Tolstoy received over 50,000 letters from all over the world in some 15 languages, of which he knew 5 fluently, but was helped by friends and others. His example of transcending political boundaries around the world is a source of inspiration to all of us. As he discovered gems of wisdom in his letters, he recorded these in his diary and later published them in a calendar of wisdom. Although he was Russian-born, he felt that he was a citizen of the world. The extent of Tolstoy's impact on world literature is enormous. In 1893, a French critic wrote, "The moral writings of Count Tolstoy have not so far fully converted anyone, but there is no one who does not take them seriously. And their influence upon every truth-loving spirit is becoming stronger day by day. I think no philosopher since Rousseau whose words have attracted so much attention. Today, almost a century since Tolstoy's death, hundreds of volumes have been published, translated, and dedicated to him around the world. In 2010, a major exhibition in Russia is being planned for Tolstoy's centennial, lesson number 5. The law of love is central to the understanding of the peaceful life. Tolstoy reminded us that love is a powerful motivator of life. It is the opposite of what he termed as the law of aggression or the law of violence. Love provides meaning to life and is central to our morality. As the highest law that guides human life, love can be fulfilled through effort and personal responsibility. Tolstoy's Kingdom of God is Within You is a classic expression about creating a non-killing world society. It is as fresh and relevant today as it was when Tolstoy wrote it in 1893. One of those people Tolstoy corresponded with was the son of William Lloyd Garrison, a famous champion on the emancipation of the blacks, who coined the phrase, "Our country is the world, and our countrymen are all mankind." In 1838, Garrison took part in a discussion in the Society for the Establishment of Peace among Men on means of preventing war. He came to the conclusion that the establishment of universal peace can only be founded on the open acknowledgement of the doctrine of nonviolence as understood by the Quakers with whom he had friendly relations. Garrison drew up and laid before the Society a declaration of sentiments which the conference adopted in Boston in 1838. The declaration stated that war is not only wrong, but all preparations for war are wrong. The declaration was so radical that many people were frightened, and that's why to this day very few people know about this work. But Tolstoy remembered, and for the Tolstoy and for the Doukhobors, love is central to human relations and the creation of society based on human goodness, equality, and justice for all. This is what Garrison wrote in his article and his sentiments. Lesson number 6. We can indeed introduce Tolstoy as a non-killing literary leader. Tolstoy was one of the big masters of the century and raised the big issues of society. His works were translated into many languages. Many Russians have endeared him with the title of Dedushka Tolstoy, Grandfather Tolstoy. This is a title that no other Russian writer has received. Several dozen Tolstoy colonies were established in Russia and abroad, including Bulgaria. Tolstoy is relevant today because humanity still faces the same problems of war, torture, disparity between the rich and the poor, inequality, illiteracy, and environmental degradation. The presence of these ills is a scar on us as Homo sapiens. Tolstoy's views persist because they were well-founded and based on practical experience. Gandhi regarded Tolstoy as his mentor and used peace and the Christian value ideas in his search for justice in India during the rule of Great Britain. Also, Martin Luther King Jr. used Tolstoy's ideas when he peacefully wrestled for the rights of African Americans. If Tolstoy the Wise were alive today, he would be very proud of the leadership forum in Honolulu as a teacher whose stature is next to such thinkers as Socrates, Confucius, and Pascal, who he would recognize as his seeds sown earlier are now taking root across the seas. As we know that a small stone thrown in the waters creates waves, the circle of these waves widens with teamwork. Tolstoy created a circle of friends for support. He put himself in a situation of strife in the face of the government and church, and he won. He proved the dictum, where there's a will, there's a way. Through Tolstoy's teamwork, the Doukhobors survived today and carry the seeds of non-killing by working together with other peace groups, meeting with Gorbachev in the 1980s, helping children of Chernobyl, lobbying politicians, writing letters to the editor, and using the World Wide Web to foster the idea. All of us here, this is the final statement, all of us here are talking about creating a non-killing society in the future. Tolstoy had this vision when he saw the Doukhobor action and called them as people of the 25th century. Maybe he was right. However, we cannot wait. In 1800s, some 14 million people were killed in war. 1900s, 150 million, and many more crippled. 21st century, we know the way, as did Tolstoy when he put his theories into action. That is why he is remembered today as an important beacon of light on the road to a nonviolent world.
Thank you, Koozma. It's very informative and useful, and we got to know that Tolstoy is an important mentor for us for the non-killing world. Now, let me invite Dr. Radhakrishnan. He's going to talk about Mohandas Gandhi.
Aloha. Mr. Chair and friends, I should begin rather this morning where our friend Koozma left. Thank you, Mr. Koozma. It was a brilliant presentation of the dreams and achievements of Tolstoy, from whom, as many of you know, Gandhi borrowed very heavily. I would rather admit that Gandhi began his experiments in South Africa, trying to put into practice some of the ideas that he learned from Tolstoy. Particularly, you mentioned about Tolstoy's great classic, The Kingdom of God. These are both the ideal as well as the Satyagraha ideal of Gandhi. It's an extension of what Tolstoy meant when he wrote, when he envisioned a world devoid of violence, killing, genocide, and whatnot. So the Satyagraha ideal, Gandhi tried to put into practice in the first ever ashram settlement Gandhi started in his life in South Africa. It's named the Tolstoy Farm. Something very, very interesting. Tolstoy himself admitted a little later, what is happening in South Africa under the leadership of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi is the most important thing happening today in the world. This is available. This is one of the letters that Tolstoy wrote to one of his friends in England. So the Satyagraha ideal was presented 100 years ago by Gandhi to humanity. 1906, 2007, invariably will be the 100th anniversary of the launching of the Satyagraha by Gandhi. So on this occasion, it will be very pertinent to share with you some of the insights on what one could learn or what some of us have learned from Gandhi, the leadership lesson that we have learned from Gandhi. Number one, to Gandhi, Satyagraha was action. It was not any theoretical formulation. It was Satyagraha to Gandhi was non-violent in action. Though Gandhi himself said sometime later, Satyagraha is the surgery of the soul, to quote Gandhi. Gandhi himself defined Satyagraha as the surgery of the soul. But a better explanation could be Satyagraha as non-violence in action. This is the first lesson that we have been emphasizing and what we have learned, because Satyagraha, as Gandhi developed, was an instrument of individual empowerment, societal transformation, and also a method to awakening people on their infinite power to stand up, to identify injustice and fight for justice. It was not any theoretical formulation. He lived it. He demonstrated it during his 22 years of work in South Africa and back 32 years of his work in India. So it was both a surgery of the soul as well as an instrument to discover the immeasurable potential that every human being is heir to. Let me invite your attention to the 4 small points that I have outlined in a brief paper that you might see in your small packet. It is easy to highlight the importance of training in nonviolence. But to Gandhi, training in nonviolence, however good it might be as an instrument to discipline oneself and also to give or to pump power and energy to every human being, you have to go beyond training in nonviolence. Training to whom? And training where? Training in what manner? Training in nonviolence has to be in conformity with 2 or 3 parameters. Number 1, the purpose with which it is imparted. And number 2, the manner in which it is being conceived. Number 3, to whom this is given as an instrument. And again, any instrument in the hands of anybody could be used for good purposes as well as bad purposes. No instrument by itself is evil. Evil lies in the manner in which anything is used. So Satyagraha could be used to clean oneself, to empower oneself, to make your opponent feel that you are doing injustice to yourself by denying me my power to live honestly and also with justice. This is a higher vision of Satyagraha which Gandhi learned very heavily from Tolstoy. So that is why I wanted to mention this and also thank Koozma for the brilliant presentation. One of the lessons that we too have learned from Gandhi, that Satyagraha, while it is action, it fills everybody with infinite power. It enables oneself to turn the searchlight on to himself or herself and see that we can grow together. This is something very interesting. Some of the things that we insist, we tell our children or our youth who attend our non-violent training classes, let us learn to live together. Let us learn to understand that we have right to live, and my happiness is always incumbent on your happiness. I cannot be happy while the rest of the world is unhappy. Let us make each other happy by sharing the brilliance of life. This is the second lesson that we learn from Satyagraha. Now I'll take you to the second lesson right here. That is the complementary nature of duties and rights of citizens. We are all conscious about our rights, and even during the period of human rights, the massive volumes of analysis that are available and the innumerable number of discussions that were held in various parts of the world and everywhere, all the emphasis was on rights. Human rights are what? Rights. Seldom do we talk about our duties. Can anyone think of duties? Can anyone think of rights without being aware of his or her duty. Gandhi once said, the Ganges of duty, the Ganges of rights originate from the Himalayas of duty. The complementary nature of rights and duty. And much of the violence happening today, much of the killing that takes place in various fields, and much of the violence that originates in human heart, human mind, is due to the lack of this awareness. So when we teach our children in our camps, Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya Samhrida, Charira Shrama, Aswada, Sarvatra Bhayavarjana, Sarvadharma Samanatva, Swadeshi Sparsha Bhavana, Vinamra Vrudanistase. I will explain these things tomorrow, today afternoon or tomorrow when we have a training session on Shanti Sena. But then, the core of what I have just cited is, we can't be conscious of our own rights. Think of the duties first, and the complementary nature of duty and rights are to be emphasized at all levels, with whichever segment of society you are interacting. This is the second lesson that we have learned. And when Gandhi told about sharing of wealth and dedicating oneself to the welfare of community, what he meant was not that all of us should become the trustees of everybody, but then it is a submission of one's own will, one's own mind to the welfare of the rest. Nobody grows in isolation. We grow in community. We find ourselves only in community, and if anybody thinks that he or she is what she or he is, or what he has been able to achieve is all because of his or her ability, dedication, all these things. To Gandhi, this was slightly beyond the comprehension. We grow not in isolation, but we grow together. That the sense of community, the health of community, welfare of community. That's why Gandhi thought about the Sarvodaya, welfare of all, growth of all. Together we grow, not in isolation, but together. This is another very important lesson, probably, if I could say, number 2, that we have learned from Gandhi. Number 3, the relevance of the 7 social sins Gandhiji identified. This happened a few years before India became independent, might be in 1942 or 41, when Gandhi was asked by a correspondent for a message. Gandhi said, I have no message. My life is my message. Some of you might know, my life is my message. This was the one message Gandhi gave. But then, a little later, when he was asked, he was not, some of you know, when India became independent on 14 midnight, that's in the early morning of 15th of August, Gandhi was not in Delhi. Gandhi was far away in Calcutta, where there was massive massacre and blood was the Calcutta streets and many streets of that part of India were filled with corpses and blood. Gandhi was in Calcutta praying for harmony in the house of a Muslim friend. And then Jawaharlal Nehru sent an emissary to Gandhi for a message as to how do we rule this country without you, Bapu? You led us to freedom. You were our leader. Give us, and you decided to keep yourself away from Delhi, and you are in Calcutta. We are bleeding. We are unhappy. But at least send us a message. Gandhiji sent them a message. That message was, I will give you a talisman. And that talisman, I have just reproduced. You may read it. That talisman was, think of the poorest man or woman who you may have come across on the street. And ask yourself, in which way the decision that you are taking, you are contemplating, will empower him or empower her? Will your decision help those helpless people improve their lot? Will it empower them? Will it make a difference in their life? Then you will see your doubts are melting away.